Now, other interesting cultural news, you have Matthew McConaughey blaming all gun owners and telling them to take responsibility, quote unquote. Now, this is after the Uvalde incident, and let's listen to him. And I do apologize, it's Matthew McConaughey, so his voice is insufferable to many. But he has this little shtick, he actually goes on an interview, so we're going to break it down a little bit and basically tell you exactly why he's wrong in pretty much every way.
On June 25th, 2022, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was signed into law following the Robb Elementary School tragedy in my hometown of Uvalde, Texas. Now, part of this bill sets aside billions of dollars to make American schools safer. Problem is, not enough school districts that need these grants know how to apply for them. And for those that do, it is a complex and expensive process. But now,
Another failed by the public sector. Why is it complex to apply for something?
we have a solution.
Oh, you do.
Matthew McConaughey announcing the new Green Lights Grant Initiative to the White House. School Safety Initiative, the massacre last year at Robb Elementary School in his hometown of Uvalde, Texas.
So this is him on ABC News, which still exists somehow. Another thing Disney should sell, because Disney is crumbling and needing cash.
I remember watching you at the White House. I've seen a lot of celebrities come to the White House on various causes, but I've never
seen someone who just has the look of someone who's perpetually inebriated under illegal substances. And he also looks homeless at the same time, and yet he's worth millions of dollars. But he does have an exceptional talent for saying the word all right. Very important.
I've seen somebody do quite what you did when you stood at that podium just after the massacre at Robb Elementary. It spoke from the heart.
Mayday wore green
He's actually clean shaven, I'll be damned.
high-top Converse with a heart she had hand-drawn on the right toe because they represented her love of nature. Camilla's got these shoes. Wore these every day. Green Converse.
Now, you notice this a lot with anti-gunners, and most politicians in general don't use logic or reason, use emotional rhetoric to appeal to people because they don't think enough, apparently.
With a heart on the right toe. These are the same green Converse on her feet that turned out to be the only clear evidence that could identify her after the shooting.
I don't know how he sounds dumber every time he accentuates some of his language. He's trying to sound smart. He's at the White House, although the bar for sounding smart, the White House is very low. It's basically buried in the ground. But
How about that?
I mean, this was something that obviously hit you really hard. Hit all of us hard, but really hit you.
Yeah, it did. You know,
good old YouTube commercials. But yeah, let's see what else he will say.
it happened in my hometown. The families invited us in to come. The families started to invite us into places and hardships that they were going through. They were inviting us in. We had families invite us in to come.
He's back to looking homeless. Kind of like, almost looks like Tom Hanks on Castaway.
For the first viewing of their child.
That's messed up. As a parent, you lose a kid, and your first thought is, Matthew McConaughey, I want you to see my child. What? I don't know, it's because Americans worship celebrities beyond logic and reason, but to have him be present at a funeral?
And that, to us, felt like we were trespassing, but the mother and father going, no, please come in. So all of a sudden, we were down there, and then Camilla got really close and ingrained with quite a few of the families and the mothers in particular. And when we left there, the consensus was, can you help make their lives matter?
Yeah.
So that led to us ending up in D.C. And then the president asked me if I would speak at a press conference there, and sure as hell I'm going to say no to that.
That was over a year ago.
Yes.
I remember what you said. You said that there's a window to get something done.
Right.
And something was done, a bipartisan bill.
32 days later.
Yep. But now we're over.
Another thing you see with the most morally vacuous people who want to take away your rights, they want to move quick, get things done, and utilize the emotional rhetoric behind incidents to strip away your rights. Now, the Founding Fathers, which I know they don't even teach who the heck they are in public schools in many cases these days, but they designed Washington for gridlock partially for this reason, so that you don't have mob rule.
We're a year past
Yep.
that, and you're trying to make sure that that's actually working.
Right. What I'm trying to do, my wife and I have started this Green Lights Grant initiative it's a follow through. All right, the first bill was passed, it's taken schools 30 years. Yeah. That's the Bipartisan Safe Communities Act. Yeah. It's got all these grants that can help secure schools physically. It's also for mental health counseling for the kids in these schools. It's the first time it's happened. Bipartisan, it's come together, it's there. And it's already working in some ways. But
in some ways,
there's billions of dollars that are still left to be spent.
I mean, it's follow-through you don't often see. Because this passed over a year ago.
Yes.
And billions of dollars for school safety. Great. That's awesome. And then you find out, you come along now, a year later, and the money hasn't gone out yet.
Well,
most of it hasn't.
Look, let me give you some numbers here. Congressman Gonzalez comes to me about 3 months after Uvalde. And says, Matthew, Camilla, 119 schools, 112 applications, 0 awards. What are we doing? That math does not add. That's a 0 success rate.
That math does add up if you're maybe on the budgetary commission for the city of San Francisco. Mild political burn.
One, way too few applications. Number two, the 12 applications, we went 0 for 12.
Yeah. In
the districts right there where Uvalde just happened. So that's when Camilla and I started researching the country and going, I doubt this is just a problem down in South Texas. We know it's just a problem all over America. You got 14,000 something schools. This grant initiative, the Green Lights Grant Initiative, is going to connect those districts to those billions of dollars. That's there, available, and wants to be used to make our kids safe.
It suggests there's something wrong with the system if you pass
And they
this,
admit it, though. The government admits
Yeah.
that it shouldn't be this complicated.
You said something else at the White House. You said that the middle ground is where most Americans are on this issue.
I don't know about that, but this is where it starts to get really interesting in terms of the BS meter should be. The needle has gone so much when he talks. It is broken off the actual reader. But let's continue to dive in.
The guns
Yes.
issue. I think you're right, but I've also been following the gun issue for years, after tragedy after tragedy, and nothing gets done on the gun side of it. So as part of the issue, the way it's framed, because it does freak out a lot of people that consider themselves strong Second Amendment.
Sure.
They think any measure is a measure towards confiscating all guns. So,
because it is.
How do you speak to those people? I think that's kind of what you were doing.
Well, one of the things, it was just one word.
Yeah.
I went in there and flipped, seemed to get those hard Second Amendment defenders' ears to at least listen. Yeah. And that was, I changed the word from control to responsibility.
Right, the hate gun.
Ironically, coming from the man who represents zero responsibility, and politically speaking, there are some people who completely abdicate political responsibility or any responsibility because they think the government should do everything.
Control.
Well, control sounds like a mandate. And nobody wants to mandate. No one wants to be controlled. But responsibility...
So he's putting lipstick on a pig. So he knows people don't like the substance, but if they put a little lipstick on, kind of like because if he was to shave in this, as he looks like a castaway, more people would be open to the idea. No, you're just clearly trying to obfuscate the truth. You're trying to pretty much deceive people, which actors usually do best.
It's still something that we can all go, yeah, I'll take responsibility.
No responsibility.
And a lot of the far right or the Republicans, they almost feel like responsibility is a value that they have ownership of.
He looks like a crack addict.
And it's a sense of almost pride and honor to be responsible. So when the narrative got changed and the questions and started calling it gun responsibility, a lot more conversations I even noticed in the few days that we were there were able to be had from both sides, because the Second Amendment defenders could talk responsibility. They could look you in the eye and talk responsibility with someone from the other side of the aisle.
I mean, some of the issues that you specifically have talked about: universal background checks, raising the age for.
Oh, and here's where the real substance. I was gonna say the meat of the issue, but Matthew McConaughey is probably some vegan, plant-based soy diet that'll kill you. But the substance comes. So now they're saying a universal background check, which is a de facto gun registry, which is illegal federally, also immoral, and historically the worst thing to ever happen in terms of personal freedoms and liberties. If you read a history book, which I know most of them in public schools have a precipitous amount of dust on them because they actually don't teach them in many cases, gun registration is the first step to confiscation. When that happens, the worst events in humanity history happen. Because guess who never gives out their guns? Governments. And governments have perform more atrocities than any individual in history ever.
Purchasing of assault.
Increasing the age to purchase something is also morally vacuous. You have someone who is young enough to die for his country. So at 18, you could vote, you could die for your country, but you can't. They want to make it so you can't buy a gun. You already have that disgusting thing on a federal level. You can't buy a handgun if you're 18. You can buy a shotgun or a rifle, and you could die for your country, but you can't buy a pistol. Again, in terms of consistency, it'd be nice if the government actually had a actual equal stance in terms of you get all your rights at 18 or all your rights at 21 or 26. A little consistency would be key, although that's exactly what the government is worst at.
Assault rifles, National Red Flag, raw.
Assault rifles is, again, their scary word that they used because they had an analyst survey a bunch of people and ask, what's the scariest looking gun and what's the scariest sounding gun? Well, the black AR-15 and the word assault rifle scared people who don't know anything about guns because it looks like a military weapon, even though it was originally designed, ironically, in California for civilian use. Red flag laws are also known as un-American because they take away your due process. They first take your guns without any evidence, and then it's up to you to spend money to go to court and defend yourself and prove that you're in fact not guilty. It's theft.
Laws, a longer waiting period for assault.
Now, one of my favorite use cases is perhaps the city of Chicago and in the state of Illinois, where most of these laws already exist in that state. But, of course, it's known as Chirac, pejoratively, during the last period in which the United States was spending some time in Iraq and Afghanistan, because every day in Chicago, more citizens died than U.S. troops overseas, which gives you a good idea of how violent that city is. They already have a background. They already have all these rules in Illinois. You need to have a license just to buy ammunition in Illinois. It's the same background check. They just want you to jump through more hoops to make it prohibitive to more gun owners. They want to discourage it as much as possible. They already have a 72-hour waiting period for Illinois for handguns. Has that changed? Has that made Illinois safe in any way? Have they had a modicum of success? No, of course not. It's a cultural issue, but no one wants to talk about that. They want to put the Band-Aid on the cut. They don't actually want to address the symptom, not the core cause, which is cultural.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath.
The commercials. Subliminally, YouTube knows this is a hot topic, so they want to have more commercials to calm us down. Although, ironically, it's actually for some type of financial service. Interestingly enough, something I have no need for.
That have widespread approval among the American public.
87%. Right?
Bullshit. That is, maybe he's extra high today, but no. That comes from a very specific poll with a very small sample size of under 1,100 users. Ridiculous.
I mean, if you look, there's a Fox News poll just earlier this year. Universal background checks, 87%.
People don't understand what that means, and they don't understand the negative consequences when they are surveyed. Also, keep in mind, a majority of guns already have that. In terms of, you go to a gun store has they have an FFL, a Federal Firearms License. Every one of their transactions for a firearm has to have a 4473 paperwork. It's a federal document. You can think of it as a job application to buy a gun. If you lie on it, or I lie on it, it's 15 years in prison. If Hunter Biden does it, he got off scot-free, which again shows the hypocrisy of Washington. They won't prosecute someone just based on political affiliations, but they want more laws to prosecute the people they don't like, basically.
Allowing police to take away guns from people who have been shown to be a threat, 80%.
How do they know? How do they decide that? People who gets to determine people who show a threat? What's your definition of a threat? In Michigan, they actually just passed a law. Oh, they passed it through the Senate or the House. I believe it has to go to the Senate. They're saying if you misgender someone, that's a felony and $10,000 fine because they consider it a threat, just misgendering someone. So one of the reasons I'm always especially pessimistic when it comes to any laws around guns is because who's deciding these definitions? Because they could use it as a weapon against you.
Raising the minimum wage, 81%. Waiting period, 70%. I mean, it's very rare you see any political issues with that much agreement.
Because they're not real polls. If the numbers were really that case, politicians who are inherently selfish to do what's best for them, if their constituencies were demanding this, they would presumably pass these laws. Now, thankfully, the Supreme Court would most likely strike them all down as unconstitutional as they are, but just inherently, just common logic, that would seem to make sense in terms of if the polls are real, then politicians would presumably do that because they want to preserve their jobs to be working in Washington for more time than most people are alive.
And yet none of those things have been done.
It's a interesting stat about the populace.
Because it's not true, yeah.
Almost near unanimous. I mean, the populist vote is there, and how?
He says the populist vote is there. Even if it was, that doesn't mean it should be passed. The Founding Fathers, again, I know we're not taught what the Founding Fathers are these days, unfortunately, in many public schools, but they didn't want mob rule. And just think of it from a moral perspective. What if the whole of society wanted to decide something that was morally vacuous? They want to pass a new law. Doesn't mean they should pass it. It should be always the Constitution that takes precedent over that. And the Bill of Rights.
Do the sides and the contingencies have, they're bunkered into their sides on this, and I don't know how the law works, but that was a question I had. Well, wait, can there be a populist vote on this, an uprising that says, look, you're not representing the masses. The law is not representing the masses. That math, you may know more about this than I do, that math should add up, and right now it doesn't.
Do you have advice to particularly Democrats on this issue who, the minute they speak about gun control,
Yes.
I mean, you mentioned one thing, get rid of the word gun control.
Right.
But
So lie to them. Same context, but just lie with a different terminology. That'll make people trust you.
even without that, do you have any advice on how they can speak?
Quit patronizing. There's a whole lot of Americans that need you to at least meet them where they are. And
Now, in terms of what they say, a broken clock is right twice a day. Although I always wonder, that means the clock has to be frozen in terms of the hands don't move, and then it'll eventually be right. But if it's on the wrong pace, they've never. But I digress. It's one of those things where, yes, this would be true, but it's never authentic. You hear this from a lot from politicians. They go, "Well, we want to talk about the issues, but it's a thinly veiled lie. Just get 2 sentences out before they push their propaganda, and they push the same legislation that they've had on their desk for decades." You saw this with Dianne Feinstein, someone who's been in Congress for, I think, longer than I can remember. She is beyond any cognitive ability. She doesn't even know she's in Congress. She was interviewed walking out one day. She goes, "Did I vote on that?" And when asked why she was out, she's gone for, I believe, 90 days. So when asked her, how's your little mini vacation and health recovery, she didn't remember she was gone. But I think she's particularly morally vacuous because, one, she lies. She says, this little bill, this will prevent all bad things from happening. And there's another assault weapons ban, which, again, would do nothing. But she literally had it in her desk, and she just takes it out strategically at these times when people can be emotionally manipulated, which I find that morally vacuous and disgusting.
what their understanding and how they've grown up on this issue with guns in their lives, and how most of them do handle them responsibly. Mm-hmm. So don't cast them down as being archaic or cavemen and women, and how could you? No.
Yeah.
Listen to them for a minute. And when you're coming in hot, which sometimes the left does, on this issue and many others.
Sometimes, well, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it's an immediate...
It is kind of funny to see the ABC reporter he's so hesitant to say anything bad pejoratively about the left. He's like, sometimes, like, he doesn't want to admit that at all.
saying, you idiot, you dumbass, what? How?
In terms of political affiliations, I always tell people, the left, yeah, he's right. Left coming in hot on a lot of things. What does the right actually do in terms of they come in hot on a topic? Most of the time they just sit there. It'd be nice if they did something for people.
Fool it. You've lost them. You've lost them. They get more defensive. All right, so come in and meet them where they are, and try to hear where they're coming from first, and understand that they have a viable stance, a viable position they're taking that they didn't just come up with last night.
I've heard you say that we're not as deeply divided as we're told we are.
No.
It depends on the issues.
Look at the percentages we just talked about.
Yeah.
86%. No.
Again, always ask yourself, when you hear any poll, for the love of God, always ask and think, what is the sample size? Was it 100 people out of Austin, Texas, where Matthew McConaughey lives? Well, yeah, then 99 of them are going to say, let's just ban all guns. That's a very specific geographic location. It's not a very diverse populace in terms of political affiliations. You're going to have a biased result from that.
Oh, but the two I was talking with my wife about this yesterday. It's human nature You don't you don't slow down to 35 miles an hour on the interstate because everyone's looking at the daisies in the rainbow in the field to the right. No, you slow down to 35 on the interstate going northbound because everyone's slowing down to look at the car wreck on the southbound traffic on the other side. Right. We love the wreck. Yeah. We love it's entertainment. We don't put our finger on. We don't love to watch health as much as we like to watch disease. These two extremes have the microphone. Yeah. It's more entertaining.
It's almost done, I promise.
Trump's been great at selling fear. Fear sells.
Trump? That's every politician since I would say probably the past 40 years. That's all they sell. Or hope and change, which, politically speaking, from a marketing perspective, brilliant. How much has changed? Debatable.
More than hope.
Could you see yourself running for something?
Could I see it? It's
Austin would elect him in a second. He's famous and he's very left. So in terms of city council or in terms of local government, absolutely he has a good chance. The real question is what larger position?
More of a larger question for me is politics the category where I can be the most useful?
Or can you do more outside like what you're doing here?
There's a great question that I'm still answering. And as of right now, to be a private citizen with my wife and to come up with an idea like the Green Lights Grant Initiative to work with the government publicly to help them, not doing their job for them, helping them pull off what they set out to do in the first place. Yeah. There is argument that that's more useful than what I'm doing right now in a small way. Mm-hmm. But
to do the kind of big change.
Yeah, well, to do the big change, right? I mean, I'd have to be convinced that that's a category that could be quite useful in. And it's something that I think about all the time.
You do?
Yeah, starting as the man I am, yeah. As a concerned father, yeah. As a husband, as a person who believes in people, mm-hmm. As a Texan, as an American, who's like, man, come on.
Debatable Texan.
Come on. Mm-hmm. I believe in us.
A refreshing.
That was, in terms of where he belongs, probably in a mediocre movie saying, all right. Which, to have gotten paid so many millions of dollars, there's actually a website that goes over and they calculated every time he says that, he makes, I believe it's like 130 grand or some astronomical high amount of money. Although, politically speaking, he could probably run on just like a campaign, a big poster that says, it's not all right. Something to that effect. And he'd probably get a bunch of people would probably vote for him. But yet again, a perfect example of the disconnect between Hollywood and reality, and also try to manipulate everyone by putting lipstick on a pig. Or in this case, perhaps a shave on a drug addict. But I digress. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. I really appreciate you taking time to click that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of August, and we really appreciate it because, obviously, the more we grow and develop, the better the content will become and the production will become. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.